Hey, everybody. Welcome to UGA Sports Live. My name is Radi Nabulsi. I'm joined by Dayne Young at his house, Coach Jim Donnan at his place, and then the guy who's sitting next to me at Classic City Eats is Jake Roos, the recruiting guru for UGASports.com. We also have Greg, the travel agent in town, and some other folks that have stopped by. Shout out to Randy and Ryan, who came by last week. A lot of folks coming by Classic City Eats to get the best mojo pork chicken fingers. What do you over there?
We got some buffalo fingers today, and then we're going double carb with the mac and cheese and the fries today. So, Red and Black actually just did a review of Classic City Eats. Their takeaway was it was a very fair value for how much you got, and I said, hey, also you want to slap your grandma over the chicken.
Yeah, so. Finally a good story from the Red and Black. He's a Red and Black alum here. I can take shots. If anybody else does, I will meet you in the parking lot and whoop your tail. Lot to talk about today, Coach Donnan. I want to jump right into the schedule. We can talk recruiting. There's a recruit last night. I kind of felt bad for Javon Bullard announcing last night at 8:30 when everyone was still talking schedule stuff.
Chad and I talked about that, and he said, he said, honestly, I think the kid's not that worried about it. He said, I told him he could probably put it out at a different time, get a lot more eyes on it, but he was just ready to go ahead and get it out of the way. So you got to appreciate that.
He'll get full discussion here at UGASports.com, but Coach, I want to jump right into the schedule. Yesterday, they announced which teams in which order Georgia's going to play. We had a question from UGA 95 on Twitter. His first question was, did Georgia kind of get screwed with the front end? It's kind of front end loaded. You have you start with Arkansas, then you've got Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama. Auburn and Alabama in the first 4 games of the season. Give us your thoughts on the schedule and how it worked out for Georgia, Coach.
You can look at it a lot of different ways. From my standpoint, I think probably without going on the internet and everybody saying, I mean, realistically, the last 3 years we've done pretty well with Tennessee and Auburn, except for the one game. So, and over the last 15 years with Auburn. So, I mean, to me, you got Florida on the back end, but if we can get through those first 3 games and then, have a shot at Alabama, then, that's going to put you in a pretty good position. Playing 10 conference games, any team's going to have a hard time going unscathed. Hopefully we can, but it's not like going through the East and playing 2 other teams. So we already had the schedule where we were playing Auburn and Alabama. Now we don't have to play them at all after the first 4 games. So I like the way we finish up. We should be fresh for the playoffs, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Dayne, I want to go straight to you on the playoffs question. Big Ten is effectively taking themselves out of the playoffs. Pac-12, don't have to worry about Oregon being in the playoffs. So what could you see a scenario where you got basically an undefeated Clemson looking at 2 SEC, maybe 3 SEC teams? I mean, we're looking at Oklahoma, Texas getting in here. Give us your thoughts on how the playoff system might work out. And if they play spring ball, do they have another set of playoffs?
Who knows, right? I mean, with Justin,
that's
Justin,
what we're waiting to get from Dayne. No idea.
I mean, look, with Justin Fields in the petition, what if that whole thing reverses course and all of a sudden here comes the Big Ten? Who knows? Based on some of the media opportunities he had and some of what's going on in the Big Ten. What I do know is, Kirby Smart doesn't care about that. Kirby Smart cares about that schedule that just came out and the next team that he's going to play. And yeah, it's front loaded, but I do think that having Auburn early is probably a bit of an advantage considering what Auburn lost defensively and how Auburn tends to get hot toward the end of a season. There's no Derek Brown on that roster anymore. There's no Marlon Davidson.
Either.
Yeah, so Auburn's got a lot to replace, and I think getting them early will be a bit helpful. From the broader perspective of what this does for the SEC, yeah, I think maybe 8-2 in the SEC still puts you right there in the mix, depending on who those wins and losses are against.
Any way you look at it, Kentucky's offense and defensive lines among the best in the country, and they got to get solidified at quarterback. But that's the kind of a Ben Hurst start for Auburn, I think, going against a Kentucky team that, Auburn's on a 0-1. They lost their last game, and it looked terrible in the bowl game, and they're going to try to start off the season. But I think Auburn's got a tougher schedule start than we do.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I could see that going that way. And really looking at the schedule for me, I thought the big takeaway was I think that Auburn is going to be a great litmus test for Georgia. Arkansas probably not going to tell you very much. Tennessee, they're still up and coming. They'll put up a better fight this year, certainly than they have. But I think that Auburn gives you a really good tune-up for Alabama. It lets you know where you stand ahead of that game. I think you'd be worried if you were going into it having played Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee. I just don't think that that's as fair of a comparison. Auburn's talent level, while Dayne, like Dayne said, they lost a lot, but they're always restocking over there.
Yeah. Very well. And it'll be interesting. Dayne points out that Auburn needs to work on their defense. Georgia's got so many questions at offense. And hopefully yesterday we got the first chapter of some of those questions answered. Georgia started practice yesterday at about 3:15, just in helmets. They had their first, I think a lot of those players were over there most of the day. I think they had lifts like first thing in the morning, and they had position meetings later in the afternoon or late after practice. So it's a true fall camp. We saw them. We reported on Thursday they were going to check into the Georgia Center on Sunday. They did. So starting Monday, Tuesday, and I believe Wednesday, they were going to be over there at the practice facility. Actually, full live practice. They downloaded a video. It's up at our YouTube page. You can check it front page of UGASports.com. You can actually watch Jamie Newman throwing passes. You can actually see some real life.
Dude, Jamie Newman is piped. What is going on? He looks like a linebacker.
Yeah, very, very fair.
I texted his high school coach, and he said he looks like a young Steve McNair in that clip.
Yeah, I can see that.
So he's loaded up, but you can actually watch Georgia practicing, and you got to replace 2 tackles, you got to replace a guard, you've got to come up with an answer at tight end, running back by committee, wide receivers, all kinds of stuff that's going to be going there. I like the fact that Georgia gets to work out those issues against Arkansas on the road, get to see Sam Pittman. And what'll be funny is I hope when this on TV after the game's over, how many Georgia guys rush across the field and hug Sam Pittman's neck.
I think you'll see a lot of that.
I hope the camera stays on it long enough.
And I hope that, depending on how many fans get to go into the stadium, I do think that you're going to see a pretty robust support from the Georgia fans that make that trip for Sam Pittman. There's nothing but love for Sam.
Yeah. Coach,
I can tell you one thing. Kirby's going to be pissed off if they hug him because he's not supposed to touch anybody.
Well, there you go. Well, they stand 5 feet apart and say, hey, and wave at him. But yeah, I remember the reception Radi Nabulsi came when he came with Tennessee. After that game was over, Georgia beat Tennessee, and then like half the defensive, not just the defensive lineman, half the defense went over and just kind of gang tackled Radi Nabulsi. It was just neat to see it, to see the love these guys have for their coaches, and they, accepted these. They knew that Coach Pittman had a chance to move up and be a head coach, and so they're all behind him. Speaking of offensive linemen, you've got some news breaking yesterday that Cade Mays might not play. Coach, give us your thoughts on the fact that Cade Mays might not be eligible to play this year at Tennessee.
If anybody could explain to me the rationale that they go through with the NCAA, it's like a dartboard, really. I mean, guys you think going to make it for sure don't make it, and otherwise, I thought Ford last year would make it on the transfer, and he didn't. But I really don't have any opinion on that. I mean, I don't really know there's all kind of conjecture why he left. I mean, from what I understand, talking to some of our people, is that, he wanted to play with his brother and his dad wanted to play with his brother, but who knows? But you always want the best for the kid, but you also want the best for our program too. And, he's certainly a good player, and every time I was around him, he showed a lot of respect to me and was a good kid. So I don't know what the rationale was, but it looks like to me like Tennessee thought that they were going to have a situation where everybody's going to get a blanket transfer. So instead of putting in the transfer and having a chance for it to be denied, they didn't do anything. And then the NCAA came out and said, we're going to go ahead and use the rules like we had. So they didn't really start the process till July. So he got turned down initially. Now he's in the appeal state. So whether he gets the appeal, we'll have to see. But they played their cards based on the fact they were playing the percentages and didn't work out. So we'll see how it works out now with the appeal.
It felt like bad timing to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like the delay from Tennessee was probably what cost them the waiver. Because, I mean, everything else that started off earlier this year, I mean, hell, JT Daniels cleared. I mean, I agree with Coach. It's a total dartboard, and I think right now, given what's going on and what's been going on since the end of July or mid-July, trying to just get the season off the ground, I can see how something like this gets pushed to the back burner.
And the reason I bring it up is because Georgia faces Tennessee early in the season, and so you've got a situation where if you had Trey Smith out there and Cade Mays, I don't really care.
Morris.
Yeah, I'm not care who you start at quarterback. That guy's got to be quite happy. And if Georgia doesn't not have to face a Cade Mays, and that's all the better for the Georgia defensive line. So, which not a whole lot of questions on the defensive line, but that's going to be a fun group to watch. That's why I'm so excited about football being back. We've been covering these guys. We didn't get a spring practice, and you just really want to see somebody line up, kick the ball off and let's go.
I'm just glad we don't have to make up shit to fill an hour anymore. It's been tough. We've done a good job, but
recruiting never stops recruiting.
I know.
So.
But it feels nice to be able to talk some actual football.
Yeah, I got you there. Before we jump into some of the questions we have there, and if you have any questions and you're watching this on YouTube, watching YouTube or on Facebook, and please share it, by the way, we really appreciate it. We want to let everybody know that we have a special deal for first responders, for frontline workers. If you're a teacher, hit me up. So if you're actually out there and you have been making it safer for us to, come to Classic City Eats and, for taking care of people, we have a deal at UGASports.com that's 75% off for your first year. So we've never been able to offer that before. So as long as you can just send me an email, let me know what field you're in, I will give you the secret code. It's not a code that we're putting out there. It's not a promotional code that we can share. Just hit me up. You get to go to the front page of UGASports.com, click on that deal. It's 75% off. I wish we could make it free, but they won't let us do that.
We'll learn.
And it's for first new subscriptions only. That's what we had to do to get it to go through all the proper channels. But point being, we appreciate the people who are going to make it possible for football to be played this fall. Now, that brings up the question, Coach. The students come back Thursday. Dayne, you've been in meetings at the University of Georgia about students coming back and testing procedures and stuff like that. I want to go Dayne, Coach first, and then Dayne. What do you think the likelihood is of after all these folks come back, we're still playing September 26th?
We've come a long way for sure, Radi, and I think everything's been very guarded to this point. That's why they haven't really made a ruling on the fans or anything like that. I think the North Carolina debacle yesterday, where they started school and then had all the had over 130 positives right off the bat, and they had all these hot spots. The real issue was they didn't have enough rooms allocated to quarantine these people. So hopefully we can learn that we're going to have some spikes. We've had it. We've seen it in all sports. And even though that's not good, we're going to have to be able to, how we handle those spikes. I know that talking to Ron Corson, Drew Wilson, the people over there at UGA, they're right on top of everything as far as the athletic situation. And I'm sure they're talking to the administrators on campus and the health officials. But everybody's got to realize the bottom line, and I'm not an expert, but I have studied this because of how it hits home with me, with my wife's situation being so critical, and the health issue is what are you going to be able to do? How are you going to be able to handle when you have a big spike? Do you have the facilities to handle it? And we have those in place here at the present time with our hospitals and our on campus things. But, it just really chaps my butt to look online and see some of these bars at some of these camps. I saw that one at Oklahoma State yesterday. It was disgusting. And to see some of these sororities and fraternities, I'm all for the social life. That's great, but you got to give up a little bit. You can't do it like you did before. Rush can't be the same. Everything is not the same, So there's got to be some give and take. And from North Carolina's perspective now, as much as I hate to say it, their athletes are going to be in a bubble now. They're not going to have to contend with the fact that they're going to be going to classes with their other people. So it's really kind of a plus for them, even though it shouldn't be. I mean, that's not college as it's supposed to be, but they're going to be the only people in the dorms, unless there's some people from different countries or people can't move out of for some reason. But so that's a long list of things I'm saying, but you better be careful, and you got to understand that everything's not going to be perfect. As far as riding the bus, they got that 5-minute rule where you got hey, just walk over there. You can make it in 15 minutes. And if I can walk 10,000 steps a day, you can definitely walk that much. So do all that stuff. I'm preaching to you a little bit, but we need to have football if it's safe. But if it's not, and some of these places think, over half the country now is not playing football.
Yeah, Dayne,
way over half the high schools aren't playing. So we got to learn from this and see what's going to happen. But, it's a very tenuous slope we're on right now, in my opinion.
Dayne, if you would kind of address what UGA is going to do, because here's my thought, and I've said this numerous times. You have to win the PR battle, if you will, every day about this, because, the Pac-12 and the Big Ten canceled over, quote unquote, uncertainty. I mean, that was their thing. We said, what specifically? And the Big 12 kind of released some of their information, but the Big Ten hasn't, which to me is criminal, because if you have information, why
it could keep people safe potentially,
then share it, put it out there. Hey, here's why we made that decision. Oh, and here's how we voted, So Dayne, you actually work at UGA. You spend time on campus, you have these things pop up. And I know that it's come up in your staff meetings. How are we going to keep the students safe? What happens on the day that it's announced that, hey, 300 University of Georgia students have tested positive, which I'm assuming that headline's coming one day. And a lot of people's reaction is shut it down. Is there a system in place, a criteria in which you say, okay, well, let's put that in perspective. 300 out of 35,000 students is less than 1%. 99% of people don't have it. Or you go, but it can grow exponentially, so therefore we are going to shut it down. In other words, what do we have to do to play on September 26th? Can we say if the exposure cases are kept under 4%, 1%, 3%, hospital capacity, symptomatic cases, what's going on at UGA that could, and I don't want to spend the whole show talking about this, but it's just, we're really excited about a schedule. Now, what can we do to make sure every day that we're still able to see that schedule?
I'm not aware of any specific threshold that would or would not have to be met for any behavioral change. All I can tell you is that what the state says, and then especially what the CDC says, which, I mean, it's beneficial that is in Atlanta. So a lot of people in Athens know people there or have direct connections. So that's beneficial for Georgia's sake. It's going to be the social distancing. It's going to be wearing the face coverings on campus. From what I've seen, whether it's on the bus or whether it's in the shared study areas, the university's done a really good job to promote a healthy atmosphere on campus. And I think students will likely abide by that on campus. The question is what happens when the students get off campus, because that's the problem that North Georgia and Dahlonega had, where the president had to send a letter to all the students saying, don't have these off-campus apartment parties where you have hundreds and hundreds of people so close together, not caring about social distance, not caring about the mask. It's the same thing the coach was saying at Oklahoma State. UGA they don't have the ability or the jurisdiction to patrol that around Athens. That's going to be on people to kind of do themselves. And so, are there going to be spikes? Yeah, I think everyone expects that. But, I think as a whole, UGA is pretty adamant in the stance that we're a face-to-face university and we're going to do the most face-to-face instruction as possible. And if that has to change, then that'll have to change. But that's the stance right now. And until that data comes in, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I do think, though, that may mean something different in terms of attendance in the stands. And that's what we're waiting on from the athletic department to see what's going to happen in Sanford Stadium. So
here's what I've heard about Sanford Stadium. Of course, nothing has been set in stone yet, but I think you could see maybe SEC-wide a 20%. I think the Chiefs came out and said they're going to have 22% of the fans available. I think the initial target for the SEC, and again, this is hearsay, rumor, but this is what I heard from a pretty good source, that Georgia and the SEC schools are going to look at 20% capacity in their stadiums up to 20,000. So, again,
let me enter. You guys
maybe zero, for all I know.
You got the computer there. You can look at it. SEC just sent out a memo right before this about the guidelines for on-campus events, tailgating, everything. And one of the things they mentioned was you have to go by the state regulations. So y'all can maybe look at that. That's one time I won up to you on the computer here.
Hey, all that work we've been putting in is paying off, Coach.
In times. That's got to be the seventh sign of the apocalypse right there. Coach has got us. Coach, you always give us something we don't know on this show.
But I just read that. Isn't that right? Find that memo there. I mean, it just SEC came out.
I haven't read anything since I woke up this morning. I don't start work until 2:00. Make my other guys do everything.
But the one thing I also read about UGA is they're going to have testing available for students over there near the swimming pool area.
Yeah, Legion Field.
Up to 300 people a day that they'll be able to test. I saw where Tech's got maybe testing over 1,000 a day. So, but we'll just have to see. But I think based on everything that the protocols, Dayne did that interview with Josh Millard about, he's very much involved in the PPE and the mask and everything. And I've asked him about, his association with UGA, and he's doing a few things with them. And he told me he's very impressed with what UGA is trying to do to protect the students and in the classrooms and everything else. So for him to say that means we're right on board compared to everybody else in the country.
And that testing that Coach is talking about is the contact tracing that Georgia is trying to do. So that's people that don't necessarily have symptoms, but are volunteering to have a test just to be able to try to see what's out there with certain people. So it's going to be up to 300 tests a day. University pays for it. And from my understanding, those first results will be released tomorrow publicly. And then every week, the results of those tests will be released.
Some sort of dog tracker app on their phone?
Yeah, so there's it's called Dog Check. So every day, faculty, students, staff are supposed to go, and it takes about 1 minute. And you say if you've experienced any of the symptoms of COVID, and you're supposed to do that every time before you come on the campus. And if you show any of the symptoms and are honest about it, it's going to tell you don't come to campus today.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. I appreciate. We always talk about how weird the times are. They are unique, and some people have responded better to it than others. And hopefully the SEC and ACC and Big 12 are making the right decision here. Again, nothing is for certain, but I'm just glad to see a schedule, glad to see that we have the option to play ball. I hope some people went on and made some reservations just in case, you get to be in these stadiums. Hey, maybe you're headed to Arkansas, maybe the Georgia-Florida game a week later. A lot of people I know have that weekend set, and it's been moved back a week, so they're going to have to adjust it. Again, be sure you buy the trip insurance in case you have to cancel it, don't buy the non-refundable deal. Get the one that's refundable. I do want to point out some of our friends who've done a great job during this entire thing. Big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford. They always have their $250 off coupon. If you just go to their website, get $250 off any vehicle. But what I like is they have the drop-off service and pickup service. So if you need like say you need your oil change, or you want a trailer hitch attached to your Ford Explorer, they will come out, pick it up from you. You don't have to go drop it off. You don't have to go out there. Of course, the place out there at Athens Ford is immaculate. It's probably clean enough to have a surgery in. The place is immaculate, but they'll come pick it up, do the service on it, take it back. They will also, if you say, hey, I'm interested in one of those 2020 Ford F-150s with a ridiculous financing deal on it, the 84 months, 0% financing, stuff like that. Let me see your red one. You can talk to one of the sales associates out there, and they'll walk out with their phone, with you on it, like FaceTime, and walk around it. You're like, hey, open the glove compartment. Okay, look into it, Hey, open the hood. Let me see the fuel injectors. Well, I'll stick it in there. All kind of crazy stuff like that. But they will work with you remotely. If you want to do a test drive, they'll drop the vehicle off, let you test drive it, and then they'll come pick it up later. So just smart policies there to keep you safe at Athens Ford. Also want to give a big shout out to our friends at Your Pie, because they do a great job with the whole or the online order thing where you use their app, the URPI app, and they immediately, when you show up, you just say, hey, I'm here. They come flying out the door with your pizza, put it in your back seat, put it wherever you want it. You don't even have to go into the store. They will bring it out to your car. The curbside is fantastic. You know it's freshly made because you customize. It's not sitting under a heat lamp. That's none of these, hey, we got a cheap pizza for you that's been out here for 15 hours. It's fresh and made the way you want it. And they're going to give me a free ice cream for my half birthday. Where's my half birthday present, Jake?
And that's gelato, Roddy.
Well, it's gelato. Yeah, I don't get a real one. But I thought it was kind of neat because I got an email from them on the app saying, or notification, hey, it's your half birthday. Stop by for free gelato. I'm like, that's awesome. So I'm now 39 and a half. So.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we keep milking this half thing as long as possible. So shout out to our friends at URPI for coming up with a great system of rewarding their loyal people. And we appreciate everybody that keeps going out there. And, of course, all of our other loyal folks. All right, you want to jump into some questions there?
Yeah, absolutely. We got some about the schedules as far as, what, as you would imagine, I think, with things opening back up. Kay Leland with a good one here. He says, this one for Coach, he says, defenses tend to be ahead of offenses early in the season. Do we expect that to be even more noticeable this year without without spring football?
That is a good question.
Absolutely. No question about it. Even not just saying Georgia, I'm talking about any place. It's just a lot of things can happen on offense. You got to handle the ball. You got to handle the snap count. You got to do everything. A defensive player can fall down on one side of the field and the play run to the other side, and nobody ever sees it. So, but it can also happen on his side, and you see it, and there's a touchdown. So, I mean, you can look at it both ways. But in the 60-some years I've been dealing with football, unless your defense is completely horse manure, I just don't think I've ever seen many teams that were really that much ahead of their defense early, and particularly in the game now where so much is involved at the line of scrimmage, where you got to make the right calls, read the routes, do what's necessary to run the right route versus coverage, block the pass protection, all that. So it's all awareness type stuff that. A defensive player's got one assignment, maybe a check. An offensive player's got maybe 3 or 4 to try to take care of all these multiple looks. So absolutely it's going to be different, and people can say, well, boy, it's going to be tough opening up with Auburn and Tennessee after Arkansas. What would they have said if we were opening up with Alabama like we're supposed to on the conference schedule? So I feel like we just got to make the best of what we got. The other thing, we got 40 days. Now we got 39. We got Jack Benny left here to finish out what's going to happen, and among which we won't practice every day. I know Roddy came out with it, and he was right. I didn't realize that, but Georgia actually not going to practice Thursday and Friday because they want to adjust to this kids going to school, and they want to let them get situated going to class, so they're going to have a full day Saturday where they can really meet and do everything you got to do to keep prepping. So you're going to have to space these days out, a lot like spring practice. Plus, you got to take 2 days off until you get to the week of the game. So we're going to have to take about 6 days out of these 39 off here between now and the first game. So we'll space those out, but I think our defense is going to be good regardless, but they're definitely got an advantage. The other negative for us is we got to go against our defense every day, and they don't give you 1 inch out there. They give you nothing. I've never seen anybody where it hurts them for the offense to make a first down. It just kills them. And it's so competitive, it makes me puke sometimes because I'm an offensive coach, and I'm saying, hey, just line up, hold the dummies, and let us get our timing down. No, we're not going to hold the dummy like this. We're going to move it back and forth, so you have to adjust.
I don't think Aziz is very nice.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
Or I should say not very accommodating.
Yeah.
They're better than they used to be. They're better than they used to be.
And it's not just the first team that Coach is talking about. I'm looking at that video that we published on our YouTube channel yesterday, and I'm seeing MK Sherman, and I'm like, whoa, this guy.
Yeah, no doubt. Coach.
Oh, go ahead. That guy's probably going to redshirt here, play in 4 games, but that shows you how many places in the country would he be starting right now. I mean, but let me ask you this: how do you get that video? Was that released by UGA?
Yes,
it was.
I was going to say, if somebody could put video up, Kirby's going to be really mad.
Well, no, they also gave us 17 pictures, too. We have a photo gallery at UGASports.com, although Arkansas gave out 180. Not going to say anything there. But shout out to Steve Koch with the folks at UGA Sports for actually getting us that stuff, because they didn't allow any media into the first day of practice. I can't imagine why. But they did give us about a minute of video, which had some good highlights on. You can actually see some of these freshman players, some of the new guys. We got pictures of Trey McKitty. We got to see the photo of Jamie Newman, like I said, piped up. And if I was coming in to face Georgia's defense, knowing that, even in practice, I'm going to have a hard time getting a first down, yeah, I'm hitting some weights. And, we had that exclusive, where he actually talked about he put on some muscle over the summer. He put, we were lucky to get the link to a video where Jamie Newman, I think Jamari Sawyer and Richard LeCount spoke to. They had a kind of a Zoom meeting, and that was sent out to some of the big donors. And luckily, we got a hold of it, and that's where we found out that Jamie Newman had put on some muscle mass, and yeah, he looks good. Some of the other questions there.
No, I like this one too from Bellringer. He wants to know, with the change in the schedule, he said, "Am I wrong now to think Auburn is the second toughest game on the schedule instead of Florida? Auburn's defense should be strong again, and the Dogs won't have as much time to gel now with that game being in week 2. Plus, the home field advantage is significantly lessened. So, does Auburn now, does Auburn now vault into the toughest game territory? Do they take over Florida for that spot?"
Go ahead, Coach, because I was going to say yes until Dayne pointed out all that Auburn lost on defense. But now I need some time to formulate my answer and basically cheat off of whatever you say.
I just feel like each game's got its own toughness and weakness and everything. But, Kirby's in both those guys' heads. I mean, he's in the head of Coach Malzahn, the same way with Coach Mullen at Florida. I mean, they've got a horrible record against Kirby over the years. So I think psychologically that doesn't bother me, but the guy Bellringer makes a good point. It's an early game and all that, but Auburn's got to adjust to a new offensive coordinator. And I don't know how much the players are going to do it. And I don't know how much Gus is going to do it. It's just it makes sense to me. And I'll say it publicly, why he's letting somebody else, particularly this guy, run the offense, who's had very limited success as a head coach calling plays. He did do some things at Clemson pretty well, but since he left Clemson, they're 75-5. So I don't know how much credit he can take at Clemson, but I like our shot against both these teams because of our head coach, our talent, and by playing Florida a week later, probably got that open date before him too. I like that too. I think that's a good play to have that open date. So the people that have that week scheduled to go down there, just stay for 2 weeks now. I mean, go down and do an open date and go on down just make it a real Quinella.
Yeah, I will probably miss the watch along show that week. I'll probably take your advice there and go spend some time in Amelia Island while everybody else does some work.
I think we should have a watch along show for the games when we have an open day too, because give me something to do.
Dave, you've broken down all these teams for you and Brent at the UGASports.com. You've done that great series of what to watch when Georgia plays all these opponents, and it's I know you do a lot of scouting, and it's a great series, folks. If you haven't seen this, you need to go to UGASports.com. Click on the players to watch, and that gives you an idea of, when you're looking at a Tennessee, when you're looking at Auburn, when you're looking at Alabama, you're looking at Florida, it's like, here's the numbers. Here are the guys that you need to watch out for. Here's the guy that when you're like, man, that defensive end was just killing us. Well, you find out about it now. You don't have to wait till after the game. So,
Yeah, you're not going to be saying, "Oh my God, who is that
who's
guy?"
that guy? We can't stop 98.
Yeah.
That's because you'll see it now. So, Dan, give us your take on the fact that Auburn being at the beginning of the season, maybe they're not as hot as they are later on, but then Georgia's still trying to put its offense together, So is Auburn a tougher game now than Florida?
I mentioned everything that Auburn lost on defense. Auburn's also having to really revamp the running back position. And as
Bo
coach,
Nix.
They do have Bo Nix, but that's a new play caller out there as well. And previously, when Gus Malzahn has delegated the play calling, it hasn't gone quite as well for Auburn's offense. And this was an Auburn offense that still put up 40-something points on Alabama in the Iron Bowl last year. It helped that there were 2 pick sixes from the defense that helped cause that. But regardless, the 2 eye-opening things from this series that Brent Rollins and I have been doing. One is that one of the best defensive players in the SEC last year was Kyer Elam at Florida, the true freshman corner. He'll be a sophomore this season. Him one-on-one with George Pickens, that's an NFL matchup right now. And so that's going to be elite on both sides. The other thing, and Coach mentioned this earlier, this was eye-opening to me. Kentucky's offensive line is among the best in the country. I'm not saying conference. I'm saying country. Kentucky returns 4 offensive linemen that graded out last year 70 or higher in terms of PFF grades. A couple of those guys are high-rated recruits. A couple of those guys are very developed. And Mark Stoops has just done a heck of a job in Kentucky to get that team to where it is. And if you're that stout in the trenches, you will compete with most teams.
Here's the thing about Kentucky. They won 8 games with a wide receiver playing quarterback. I mean, and the guy's a good athlete, no question about it. Bowden or Bowden, however you pronounce it, and he's going to be a pro player. But if they can get any kind of aerial attack to go with this, I think this Wilson is the quarterback.
Terry Wilson's back.
Yeah, so and their defense is good, and the thing that's plagued Kentucky over the years since he's been there is how many games down the stretch they've lost in the last 4 or 5 minutes. Last year's Florida game when Franks got hurt and they put Trask in there and they came back. They lost to Florida a couple of years ago when they didn't cover a guy in the end zone. I mean, just inexplicable losses that maybe through experience now and through confidence that they're a real threat to be. They are the 3rd team in the East. Now, can they be the 2nd team? That's what they're working to do. They've had a terrible record against Florida, that's for sure. But I just feel like Florida right now is in a very precarious position. They got 3 of their best receivers considering they didn't practice yesterday. They're considering whether they're going to opt out or not. Now, if they're considering it, that means they're thinking about it very heavily. And if all of a sudden you got a passing game that revolves around go-to wideouts, and now all of a sudden you just have a guy like their tight end back as their leading receiver, that's going to be a tremendous hole in their team. I mean, that's going to be to take the Tony kid and some of those other receivers out. Boy, I tell you. And I thought Kirby did a good job. I don't know who asked him the question, but you got to develop depth here. I mean, you don't know who's going to quit. Hopefully we don't have anybody. You don't know who's going to get the COVID, and you don't know who's going to get hurt. So you got to be 3 and 4 deep at every position.
Yeah, go back to –
why don't you guys tell us who those 3 receivers are? Did you see that?
Look up the 3 receivers they're thinking about.
You guys do any research for this show? Or what do y'all
We're worried about eating, Coach. Leave us alone. I do want to point out, you say you got to be deep across the board when you look at what happened to Georgia when all of a sudden they trot out, you find out that it's starting 2 cornerbacks were out for the University of Georgia last year. And you're like, hey, where's Stokes? Where's Tyson Campbell? You saw how that game progressed with out starting quarterbacks. That was a bit tough. So you make a good point there, Coach. You can't just you think, well, it's a wide receiver. You might have 7 or 8 wide receivers on the roster. Losing your first number 1, number 2, number 3, even if it's 3 of the top 5, that's still a huge chunk of your offense. So that could be a real pain.
It looks like per Twitter, and don't hold me to this one, but it says Jacob Copeland, Kadarius Toney, and Trayvon Grimes are potentially the three holdouts. Toney and Grimes, two seniors.
Even beyond that, for my film review, I wouldn't bank on Kyle Trask being Florida's quarterback the entire season.
Really?
I like Emory Jones a lot, and I think he's going to add something to their kind of the dynamics of their offense. He's a really good runner.
We like Emory Jones too. We covered
Mullen's history. He loves those running quarterbacks. I mean, he put Emory Jones into games last year in some situations where, you just don't understand it. But that's his MO. He likes that. And Emory Jones is slick now. I mean, he's a slick quarterback. I like him, and he can make plays, and he's a better passer than you think too. I mean,
and I've seen some people kind of give Emory some grief. They're like, "Oh, he's in there." Do not underestimate him. We've seen him in person many, many years. Emory's a hell of a quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to face him if I'm a Georgia guy. Just let you know right now. One group I would like to face is our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. I forgot to mention them last week, and I felt bad about it.
I thought so.
I know. They didn't say anything because Ryan doesn't care. Ryan's he's just good people. He just wanted to talk Georgia football. So
sure.
Shout out to Ryan Lucy and the friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. 1,500 reviews, 5 stars across the board. I can sit here and list all the awards. You go to their webpage. They're not bragging, but they've got Better Business Bureau awards, Favorite Neighbor awards, all sorts of customer service awards. Because again, it's a locally owned garage door company it's Ryan and the folks over there are basically customer service oriented. They could be selling cars, they could be plumbers, they could be realtors, they could be ditch diggers, and it would be the best ditch digger customer service you'd see in your life. They just happen to sell doors. That's like almost like the side hustle. The first hustle, if you will, is customer service. So, when you go to their site and it pops up a little thing, "Hi there, do you have a question?" They have chat where you can just say, "Hey, I've got this issue." Talk to them. If you want to schedule an appointment, you pick the time and date. They come out to talk to you for free. They have a 10% off for UGA fans. The guy, when I say he wants to talk Georgia football, he puts his money where his mouth is. That saves people hundreds of thousands of dollars. The way they have discounts for stuff like that. So just swing by Aaron Overhead Doors, check them out. If they're good enough for the Georgia fans, and they're good enough for anybody. So if you're watching the show and you're a Clemson fan, I don't know why you're watching it, because we're going to make fun of Clemson, but be sure to check out Aaron Overhead Doors. They will take care of you like nobody's business. And my apologies for not mentioning them last week, but we do have, if you're a long-time watcher of the show, then it's Aaron Overhead Doors, and you know how much they take care of it. So, but you never know when you're going to need them. We're supposed to have a lot of rain this week. If you notice some puddles in your carport or your garage area, they can fix that. So just letting you know.
All right. Got a question here I wanted to hit before we hop into some recruiting. BSW 44144 on the board says, which corner besides Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell, and DJ Daniel do you predict will get the most playing time?
Tyson Stevenson.
Well, I guess though you think you see him at the corner spot or playing at that star position?
Well, Webb's going to be in there. I mean, we could see Stevenson in the dimes when we have 6 out there. But if you go too deep, he's going to be the 2 deep corner there. I think Kimber's going to come along and help us there at corner too. Really athletic kid that you heard a lot about Ringo, and as Dayne told all of us, for anybody else, that are you an orderly at the hospital on the second shift, Dayne, or something? Or
the only time I spent around that hospital was to get a kid into this world about a month ago. So no.
Good call there. But I really like Stevenson, and I think we got as many pro prospects at corner as anybody in the country. I mean, those guys are long, athletic, and I saw where DJ Daniels had a little foot injury this summer, so that puts him behind a little bit. But we're very athletic at corner. Can y'all think anybody else would be the corner beside those 4?
If there's one guy, I was going down the list, and if there's one guy that I think people have been waiting on, and if there's a time to do it, it's Amir Speed. He's got the length. I know they were really high on him coming in. Maybe this is the year he puts it all together. You hope so.
What about William Poole? If he can get
William
over there.
Poole's in there. Chris Smith's part of it.
I think he does more safety, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of all over the board with those guys. So
Yeah.
I think. Now I will say, in terms of the freshmen, I think you're going to get a healthy dose of Jalen Kimber. I really believe that. I think that he's a kid who can really get in and make an impact for you quick, super fast. A guy that I think is going to do a lot of the things the coaches like right off the bat.
Yeah, I like William Poole too, as a jack of all trades. Can come in there and play a lot of positions. Speed is a fantastic special teams player. You give him an assignment, and he's got athleticism. He's just had a hard time with different coverages and everything. I don't know, and plus he's had a hard time. Not his fault. I mean, you got these world-class guys running out there on the edge like Campbell and Stevenson and Stokes, speed-wise. And once they get that kind of experience, it's hard to sub in there for people like that. But you make a good point on speed. Our secondary is going to be a real plus for us. It's going to allow us to really line up and do some things up front, pressure-wise, that you probably might not do if you didn't have a good back end. And another guy could play corner for us would be Nolan Smith.
No kidding. Yeah.
The reason I said that, I mean, I've heard from a reliable source that he hit over 20 miles an hour out there with the GPS. Now, I don't know if that was in the summer when they were doing things, summer conditioning or what, but the guy that told me that is totally usually on what he tells them is usually true, but we don't have any privy to those kind of stats. But how you be standing around and people say, hey, Nolan Smith, did you know he hit over 20? If he hit over 20 at his size,
that's not right. That's unfair.
No.
He should have to play like with one leg tied up.
Yeah, they need some like Harrison Bergeron, weights around his neck or something, just
like a Harrison
That's got to be wrong. That's got to be wrong.
Now, speaking of defensive backs, Georgia added one last night, Javon Bullard. If you've been following over the last few months, I guess, over at UGASports.com, we've mentioned him as kind of a consistent possibility. Things really picked up, it seemed like, over the last month or so. And, a guy that I feel like people don't know a lot about, Javon Bullard, out of Milledgeville, Georgia, Baldwin High School, Baldwin Brave. And Trent and I were kind of going back and forth about it, talking yesterday. There was some hand-wringing about, what's Georgia doing, taking a 3-star kid? What are they, at this point? Right. Well, somebody said, and now I will say, I want to throw this out there because I don't know if you saw it. Somebody on the board said, how come everybody, this was someone trying to be negative. They said, how come every kid we take is going to be Eric Stokes and every kid Tennessee or Florida takes at the 3-star is going to be a bum? And someone came in immediately thereafter and said, that's why we're 6-0 against these two teams. So they were like, that's pretty that was a crushing blow. But Bullard,
because your 3-star Solomon Kinley went in what round?
Yeah. So Bullard, a kid though that, like I said, I don't think people know a lot about. I had to go in and watch the film myself to get a kind of a feel of where he is. I think that this is a guy who, as Coach mentioned, kind of a jack of all trades, like William Poole. He's a kid with enough speed to get up and play in the slot. He could rush off the edge if you needed him to do that, do a corner blitz or something like that. I think he's certainly got enough speed and size to play the corner spot, but I think he's probably at safety, and I think that that's where Georgia likes him early on. He's a great returner for you if you want to use him in that way, and really good speed on the from wide receiver as well. He has some plays too where he's tracking a guy all the way across the field, to get back into a play. So, I understand the hesitance from some people, but this is a kid who I think has enough athleticism and enough upside to certainly justify the take, especially given how many defensive backs you took last year.
Yeah. I want to point out something for the folks watching this. Yes, UGAsports.com is part of Rivals.com. I am a company man, been with them since 2007. Did spend some time at ESPN, saw the ratings system there. I've seen the rating system industry-wide. I follow it. It is my livelihood. That said, I would trust Kirby Smart's evaluation over that of Rivals. think about it. If we're wrong, we take some chiding. Hey, you said a 3-star was going to, again, and we say a 3-star is a guy who's supposed to play college football and be very good at it.
Yeah.
You know, a 3-star is not a slur by any means. That means he's a damn good college football player. Point being, Kirby Smart's making $7 million a year to make this decision. When he tweets out "Go Dogs," that means he wanted this kid. You know, is a plan B, plan C guy? Hey, you can only start 22 guys. The point being, when people were doing the same thing with Saul McKinley, they did the same thing, shaking their head with Eric Stokes. We just had
well, and here's the thing. Rightfully so with Eric Stokes, right? I mean, like, you remember, I know we've talked about this ad nauseum, that first practice, the kid looked totally lost. I mean, he didn't look like he had a clue what was going on. It speaks to the development of this Georgia staff. And I think the fact that Kirby Smart especially is super involved with those defensive backs, he knows what he's looking for on the back end.
Right, and then that's not a shot against Mark Richt. If Mark Richt took a defensive back, it's like, I trust Mark Richt more with the offensive player than I do with a defensive. Kirby knows what he wants. That's his baby, is a defensive back. So maybe, even though, UGASports is pretty low cost, 27 cents a day, maybe Kirby knows more than we do about whether or not they should have taken Javon Bullard.
And I'll say this too, because we did get this question. It says, are there going to be any Rivals camps or any other large-scale camp evaluation settings this year, and how will that affect Rivals rankings? I don't know that this is a kid who really would have benefited a lot and come out of that 3-star range. I'm not saying that. What I will say is that everybody has to take the entire industry, not just Rivals, 247, ESPN. Everybody's got to take the recruiting rankings this year with a huge grain of salt, because no one's got to do anything close to the normal evaluation that they normally do. Yeah. Nobody got to see spring ball. Nobody got to see the opening camps. We didn't have Rivals camp. The opening didn't happen. The 5-star challenge didn't happen. No Under Armour. I mean, it's just a situation where you're playing with a lot more unknown. You haven't had a chance really for guys to get on campus to go visit kids because a lot of media has been blocked out of a lot of these schools. A lot of them just now kind of starting to let people back in and just now starting to fire football up. You'll see some movement for sure. Definitely, I think as things push toward December. But I caution anybody to put too much stock into the rankings this year, personally. Yeah. And I say that as somebody who helps with the ranking.
But still sign up at UGASports.com, 27 cents a day.
Yeah, sure. No, I think that is important. And actually on the same question we got here, ZXBY140 asked that one. He said, also, any word or thoughts on when schools might be allowed to host official visits? Surely the NCAA isn't going to keep the early signing day and prohibit all these kids from visiting. I think that, we've talked about the fact that I think that they're really just trying to get this thing off the ground first. You got to get the season started before you can think about getting kids to visit for the season.
Yeah, and coach made a good point last week on this, kind of the same thing. He said, look, you don't know where these kids have been.
Exactly. Sure.
You bring them into the program. It's like, what? Again, you're not saying that they can infect everybody, but when you're trying to keep new contacts to a minimum, that's a tough thing to weigh versus, hey, we're going to bring you into our system that we're trying to keep as immaculate as possible. But at the same time, we have to get a recruiting class, and we want to show you the thing. Coach, give us your take on kind of that. How would you pull this off when you don't want to bring the kids in, but you have to bring them in? I just can't. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, they postponed it to September 30th now. I know that. So, before you can even consider it, I just think with the protocols you got of the games, I can't see any unofficial visits this year during the season. I just don't see how you can. You're worried about all the different kind of testing involved with your players, and you can't. And if these guys come to a game, are they going to be able to come up and see the kids and all that? A great example to me of people being subjected to the virus was Oklahoma had a game on August 29th with Missouri Southern. And then the Big 12 came out with a deal that we're not going to play anything but conference +1. And your first conference game can't be until September 26th, and you can play a non-conference game the 12th or the 19th. So Oklahoma immediately stopped practice because they were going with the idea of 29 practices before the 30th, the game on the 29th of August. And at that time, they told their players, you know, hey, we'd like for you to stay here, but if you want to go home, you can. Well, they resumed practice they came in to start practice again yesterday, and they tested their team, and they had 9 positives on their team, 8 of which were guys that left the campus. So it just goes to show you the control environment that they're in, and you just don't know when a guy goes out. I know some of our tests that were positive here that I've heard about were during the summer were when kids left here and went to Atlanta or went to Florida and then came back. You just don't know it's a different protocol. So as far as answering the question straight up, I don't see us having any official visits anytime soon. And there's no advantage in trying to do that if you want to try to play the games, because you're just putting your players at risk.
Yeah. And to the point of the early signing period, I was a bit hesitant about that idea early on. Just because, you know, there's always going to be some pressure from coaches to go ahead and get it done. They want to know their numbers. They want to go ahead and get, you know, these guys in the boat. That way we can focus our efforts on these other guys. I think that you'll see coaches pull back from that a little bit this year, but I'm still in favor of the early signing period because there are a lot of kids, and you're even hearing it now from the 2022 kids who are saying, I'm done with this, man. I can't handle it anymore. I mean, Gunnar Stockton, that was one of the reasons he cut his list down to Georgia and South Carolina, because he'd been so inundated with calls throughout this shutdown. I mean, you know, we were talking to Brock Bowers. He said, if I leave my phone for a day, I come back and there's 55, 60 missed texts and calls and Zooms. And, you know, I think that it's good for those kids to still have that option available, because there are some kids that know exactly what they want to do and they're ready to go today. I think David Daniel, for example, would sign on the line if he had the opportunity.
Yeah, and
I think
just moved to spring, then they can play.
Yeah, yeah.
One point I would make on that early signing day too is you always wanted that as a coach. If a guy really knew what he wanted to do, he could go ahead and do it and take all the pressure off. Plus, you could get them in here and start in the even if they didn't sign early, they could come in and play because they signed a grant. But I would say one thing about our schedule here, though. You're talking about Gunnar Stockton. The last game of the season for us is the Gunnar Stockton Bowl, because that's going to prove to him and his family, is South Carolina competitive with Georgia? Even though South Carolina beat us, I think at that point, is South Carolina really a force in the league? Are they going to be able to win 5 or 6 games in the conference? And if they don't, I can see him making that move to Georgia pretty quickly. I hope so anyhow, don't you?
Sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think Georgia's, that's their, I think South Carolina and Vandy to round out the season. Should be fun to watch. Yeah,
it's a pretty light landing on the season.
Yeah,
I mean, Georgia's got to be happy about that.
I want
to know how
the only team beat us in the East.
Anybody else did.
Only teams beat us in the East in the last 3 years is South Carolina. So, hey, that's not as light as you think.
I agree. I keep telling people to watch out for South Carolina. I know that maybe they don't have a ton.
Never said that.
I said that. The defensive front, especially Zach Pickens, Jordan Birch, Rick Sandage up there. They're loaded at that spot.
Yeah, Rick's pretty good.
Hey, they might have the second best transfer quarterback in the country.
That's a great.
Yeah,
point.
that's also true.
Yeah, that's been kind of an Achilles heel quarterback. So you got Mike Bobo over there coaching him up.
That kid from
Marshall
Colorado.
Boyd coming in as a freshman running back out of DeMatha, who I think is going to really change the running game there.
Y'all get me depressed. I'm going to talk about Academia Brewing Company real quick. I want to point out that a couple of days ago they had empanadas, the little fried meat pies. If you love empanadas, I know the first place you probably think of, is not exactly Academia Brewing Company, but that's the kind of crazy, fantastic stuff they cook over there with their actual chefs on place. It's probably one of the cleanest restaurants you can walk into in the universe, because they have all that alcohol on hand to make sure that their tables, which are incredibly distanced. We mentioned the other day that they've actually created an outdoor beer garden, so you can sit outside if you want to. The weather's it's going to be kind of rainy the rest of this week, but indoors the tables are really, really far apart, and then you can go outside as well. Plus they have fantastic beers, huge distributing partner now, selling beers all over the North Georgia, which you couldn't get before. now that when you go into your Decatur, you go into the local package store, you find Academia Brewing Company. So buy their beer, but if you're in town, swing by Academia Brewing Company. You can have empanadas. They even have they had a bicycle ride and beer thing. You know, they have the
the
cycles.
Peloton folks. Yeah.
So they actually have a bike group, and then plus they had beers paired with that. So in other words, they're just having a lot of fun out there. Be sure to follow them on Facebook because they always have neat specials up there and neat things they're doing. And shout out to our friends at Academia Brewing Company. Again, huge Georgia fan. A great place to watch the game too. You know, they have that the lounge there with all the great couches and stuff with the giant screens that they rope off.
Or rent the private room.
Yeah. So, and again, it's not you're not listening to 80s on 8 on Sirius while the game's going. They actually have the play-by-play. But ideally, if you go out there, you put it on the big screen, and then on your phone or your laptop or one of the side screens, watch the watch along with me, Dayne, and Coach Donnan, where we are actually going to be watching Coach Donnan predict plays before they happen. That's the best part of the watch along show. So you can watch that on your secondary device, watch on your phone, your iPad, your laptop.
You know, one thing you might ask those people out there that agree with us on a lot of things is they could get a computer up on the feed and put it up on our feed up on one of the big screens.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'll try to get our friends to do that over there. Matt Casey and the folks, they can knock that out for us. Some questions for us. Anything else?
All right. No,
we don't have a lot of time left.
No, mostly people just wondering about, our feelings on the schedule. Coach, do you have a take on Bullard? I mean, did you get a sense of, have you had a chance to watch some film on him? What are your feelings about the Javon Bullard take?
I mean, to me, he's position specific. He can be a star. He can be great on special teams. He's the kind of guy that Kirby's always made his living on. Doesn't make many mistakes, really smart. And I always like a guy that plays both ways in high school. Like most coaches are going to use the best athletes on offense if they can to score points. But, some programs have so many players that you can play both play one way, offense or defense.
That's a good take.
But, I'm high on the kid just because, number one, he's a Georgia kid. He's from close to here. He wants to come here. And I don't get caught up in the stars. I mean, I told you when I met Jonathan, when I met the big nose guard from at Charlotte, Davis.
Jordan Davis.
I told you then. I said, you can throw those stars up into the heavens on this guy. This guy's going to play here. And that was the first day I ever met him over there. He was watching our practice for the bowl game. Remember that, Roddy?
I do.
Yeah. Just very.
My first thought was, what, the fat kid? Not being mean. I'm just saying. I remember how big he was. It's like 3.
Yeah, he was like
350. I think all of us get too involved with it.
A couple years for him to work into shape, and then he comes in as freshman, just throwing people around. I mean, taking on.
I couldn't have foreseen what he was.
Again, just my point being, I'm not having blind faith. If sometimes you go in a 3-star and that's not the kid you want. But I think if anybody's earned the benefit of the doubt, let's give it to Kirby Smart, and his staff. He's got a bunch of great recruiters over there. If it's not Kirby, then maybe Dale McGee. Give him benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
I don't know. Give Dan Lanning benefit of the doubt. There's
Glenn Schumann knows what he's doing.
Glenn might know Todd Hurley been pretty good for what he. Point being, let's give him that credit. I do want to kind of touch back on the schedule. When they say, "What's your overall opinion of it?" I think a lot of people are like, "Wow, we got 2 tough teams right in the beginning." Sometimes that works out for you. Let's say you stumble at Auburn and beat Alabama, or vice versa. Win out the rest of them, you get that one loss. If you have a loss earlier in the season, it's a whole lot better than having it at the end.
Sure.
There was the possibility of we saw people talking about maybe a Georgia-Florida showdown, the last game of the season. The winner of that's out. I mean, the loser of that, is out. So it's like, it becomes an effective play-in game or a playoff game if it's at the very end of the season. I think if Georgia has a stumble early on with the rebuilding offense, against one of those teams, as long as you beat Florida towards the end and win out the rest, also it's like, look, Georgia's won 5 in a row, 4, you've won that. They're on a winning track. They only lost this one on the road or something like that. I could definitely see a situation where playing those early games might stink if you're thinking about, hey, I want Georgia to get everything up and running before they face these big teams. but it also kind of gives you a little room for error because then you're one of the hottest teams there towards the end.
I agree.
10 conference games is a lot. So I think fans should cater the expectations that it's going to be, I would say, virtually impossible for any team in the conference to go unbeaten with the schedule. I just think it'll be absolutely brutal. And if a team does, just stop right then and give them the title.
Yeah, I can definitely see a situation where, like, hey, we went 10-0 against the SEC. Oh, what about the playoff game? No, I'm good. Give me that try. Hey, other SEC teams have claimed a title for less.
No question.
Just saying. All right, is that it for this week?
I think so.
We ran a little long. Sorry, folks. If you're trying to get back to work, skip work.
Oh, well.
It doesn't matter. You're at home anyway in your pajamas. So be sure to tune in next Tuesday. Hopefully we'll have some intel from UGA's practices. Next Monday, they'll be in full pads for the first time. So maybe following Tuesday, we'll have some scuttlebutt.
You might be on commit watch next week, too.
Really? You said that last week, and they had a couple commits. So, all right. Always trying to promote recruiting for some reason. All right, for Dayne Young, Jim Donnan, and Jake Roos, I'm Radi Nabulsi. We appreciate everybody tuning in. We'll see you next week. Take care.